Thank you for joining. My name is Jennifer Romero-Higgins, and I am here representing the Data Engineering, Analytics, and Automation Group from American Airlines and IT. I have been working at American Airlines for 23 years, and am responsible for the DataOps initiatives for our department. I'm here to talk about our DataOps journey from complex to simplicity and walk through some of the things we have done to kickstart the group. We will talk about our successes as well as our challenges that have been experienced throughout our journey. First, let me tell you a little bit more about American Airlines. We are based in Fort Worth, Texas. We have over 5,000 daily flights. We service over 60 countries and employ over 100,000 team members. I'm sure many of you participated in our Advantage Loyalty program as well. This program allows you to earn miles when you fly on American, One World, and other participating airlines, as well as over 1,000 partners. What is our why? American Airlines is committed to living our purpose to care for people on life's journey. To do so, we are focused on running a reliable operation and returning American to profitability. Now that you know who we are, let's talk about where we began our DataOps journey. Our department was on a mission to migrate our data and ingestion processes from on-prem into the cloud, and we were just becoming familiar with the resources required to support this process. In 2020, we had an initiative to move our data into the cloud and spent most of the year learning about the new cloud resources and redesigning solutions to perform the ETL, extract, transform, and load processes on the new cloud platform. It was a time of discovery and rapid learning of new skills. It was also a time when we lost around 30% of our workforce due to COVID-19 cutbacks. Individual data engineering squads were responsible were responsible for setting up their own cloud environments and developing processes to ingest data into the data lake. Each squad worked independently of one another. At the time, it would take months to stand up an environment, and all of this was done manually. The setup process grew to be over 100 steps, and it was very easy to make mistakes and require rework to resolve setup issues. Additionally, we had to stand up multiple environments per system as we needed both a non-production and production environment. I recall my journey specifically because I had the pressure to migrate 17 source systems in a short period of time, and I quickly realized I needed to develop solutions that could be reusable in order to meet these deadlines. I remember refactoring my code to be parameterized and rebuilding pipelines to be generic so they would work no matter what data was being ingested. Many best practices evolved during this time. For the next 2 years, we continued to ingest new data sources into the data lake, and we refined our code to support ingestion into the various data zones: raw, structured, and prepare zones. You may also know these as the medallion architecture of bronze, silver, and gold. The demand for new data sources was so high that we didn't have enough data engineering squads to satisfy the needs of the business, and we were seeking ways to allow the businesses to serve themselves. That is when we formed the DataOps group, a team who would focus on self-service solutions using the best practices that have been formulated through the past few years. So you might be asking, what is DataOps? The definition of DataOps from Gartner is as follows. DataOps is a collaborative data management practice focused on improving the communication, integration, and automation of data flows between data managers and data consumers across an organization. The goal of DataOps is to deliver value faster by creating predictable delivery and change management of data models, and related artifacts. DataOps uses technology to automate the design, deployment, and management of data delivery with appropriate levels of governance, and it uses metadata to improve the usability and value of the data in a dynamic environment. Phew! That may be a lot to consume in one sitting. The same was true for us. Therefore, our team was initially focused on automation of our data flows and discovering ways to deliver faster. We had some frameworks which could be used to facilitate rapid ingestion, but we hadn't formalized these frameworks for department-wide use. The goal of the newly formed DataOps team was to make the processes easier for the broader community so that they would be able to spend more time on getting insights out of the data versus setting up resources. In order to determine what the team should focus on first, we conducted a value stream mapping session. The goal of this session was to identify and alleviate pain points that exist in the current state of our processes. Looking at this diagram, you can see how much collaboration was done to strategize on the right opportunities to improve our situation. We spent 2 days doing interviews prior to the session and then collaborated to identify the most important items to address. Some of the feedback from the stakeholder interviews included how painful the process was to set up the prerequisites. This was in reference to the cloud resource setup process. Time and resources to improve the process are not available. This was due to the loss of 30% of the workforce in 2020. This workshop allowed us to visualize the current state, envision the future state, and strategize on how to deploy the future state. Outcomes included mapping of the current state process, identifying root causes of waste and delays in the current state, envision a future state without the waste and delays, a state that simplifies how data is delivered to the business users, prioritize initiatives that could solve the root causes within the current state. What we learned during this process is that setting up the cloud resources that were required for the data ingestion process was too tedious, and we needed more automation around it. Next, let's look at the top initiatives that came out of this session. We came up with a set of outcomes and initiatives that included the following. Components needed to be self-contained. All processes used to build resources will be independently self-contained. This includes the automation of secret setup and dynamically creating service principals with standards the first time around. Create APIs to accelerate the requisitioning process. Validate the output of each step to avoid failures further down the process. Incorporate user experience usability best practices into the requisitioning process. Develop a wizard process that navigates you to the correct steps. And a center of excellence to standardize and maintain the requisitioning process. We mapped these outcomes to roles, which included responsibilities for the DataOps, platform, enterprise, and security teams. The value stream mapping outcomes drove the initial version of our vision for the DataOps group, and that is to provide self-service pipelines to accelerate your analytics journey from data need to data reality. As part of this vision, the DataOps team created a guild that meets twice a month. The purpose of the guild is to gather, share, and prioritize activities that would help to deliver results in simplifying the onboarding and ingestion processes. The team's objective was to unify our data ingestion process. Common solutions were centralized and made reusable so we can stop reinventing the wheel. Our mission was to continuously identify and remove pain points. And ultimately, we were working towards achieving the easy button with respect to data analytics. The team focused on creating self-service accelerators to improve the onboarding experience. We teamed up with members of the Enterprise Data Platform team and created a process to gather the necessary attributes required prior to creating the cloud resources. we leveraged our developer experience platform, which is a hub to identify, discover, and create American Airlines technology. And we used this to create front-end forms to gather attributes related to the application. This included information about the owners, the resources that would be needed based on the ingestion type, and then automated the creation of all required cloud resources to support the data ingestion process. Some of the automation was achieved by creating and calling APIs, while others relied on the DevOps pipelines to create the necessary resources. In addition, we deployed a GitHub repo for the application containing the default code base for ingestion and a set of GitHub actions to be used for the promotion of code from lower to higher environments. This supported continuous improvement, continuous deployment initiatives. All resources followed the platform architecture and data architecture standards when it comes to resource naming and engineering patterns. These accelerators automated 80% of the 100+ steps that were originally done manually. They were a game changer for both the business as well as the data engineering community. It gave us the ability to quickly stand up our environment and allowed us more time to focus on what was more important, and that is the process of ingesting and transforming the data for analytics. So let me share a few of our success stories. We have several testimonials from varying levels of expertise that claim the amount of time saved by the self-service accelerators. You can see here we have 1 month to 1 hour, weeks to days. It made me a one-man army. The wonderful part of the onboarding accelerators is that it allowed for self-service for the business, but it also empowered the data engineering teams to stand up their environment quickly and give them more time to focus on the data and the ETL process. Let me remind you that this was a manual process that once took a few months to perform for each environment. These testimonials really show how much easier things were for everyone once the self-service accelerators were put in place. And I can vouch for that personally. In addition to the self-service accelerators for onboarding, the DataOps team created a set of frameworks to standardize the data ingestion process for both batch files and streaming data. These frameworks include a set of configuration files, pipelines, notebooks, and jobs required to support the ingestion process. The ingestion frameworks leverage a library called Beetles. Beetles is my pride and joy. It is a proprietary inner-sourced Python library that contains a set of common ETL functions that also applies both platform architecture and data architecture standards as code. Beetles is intended to simplify the ingestion process by providing a common way for everyone to perform tasks related to ETL. These frameworks are deployed as code into the application's GitHub repo, where each team has the ability to customize it to suit their needs. The deployment of these frameworks is embedded into our self-service forms. Not only do they provision the cloud resources, they also deploy the objects required to support the ingestion framework. I mentioned that the Beetles library is inner-sourced. This allows anyone from American Airlines to contribute new functionality to it. Our goal was to foster a culture of collaboration and sharing within the organization. The intent of this library is to centralize common ETL functionality so that multiple teams can use the same code without having to develop it from scratch. Another important feature of the Beetles library is that we have incorporated test-driven development into the functions within this library to ensure that when changes are made to the library, it will not break existing functionality. Now, while TDD can feel like a lot of effort up front, we have seen the benefits of this process as it allows enhancements to be made and will quickly identify if those changes have caused any issues with the existing functionality. So how did we get others to lean in and leverage the new frameworks? We spent a lot of time creating content so that others could learn and understand the frameworks. We provided this information in the form of wiki pages, videos, and even a training site where they can step through the ingestion process manually to get a detailed view of what happens under the hood. For all the self-service accelerators, we provided step-by-step instructions on how to fill out the forms. We also hosted a hackathon where we provided overviews of our frameworks and encouraged involvement from others to contribute. The hackathon was a major success with 140 participants both in person and online. You might be wondering what kind of results we had from all this effort. Because of both the accelerators and ingestion frameworks, we were able to hit our OKRs, objectives and key results. This is where it really counts. At the beginning of 2022, we set a goal on how many applications we wanted to adopt our frameworks. Midway through the year, we reset our goal based on how well we were doing, and we are proud to say that due to the self-service accelerators and ingestion frameworks, we achieved a 245% increase in the adoption of our frameworks by the end of 2022. Let's talk about some of the challenges we experienced during this journey. The first being, we needed to engage early. The accelerators worked well for those starting from scratch, but they weren't designed to work with an application that had already set up some of their resources manually. The primary reason for this was that the accelerators ensured that resources were created based on a set of standards, and we could not guarantee that the manually created resources would meet those standards. They aren't 100% foolproof. They are always evolving and improving. We are learning as we go, and as more and more teams leverage the accelerators, we discover new features to make the process less painful. Another challenge is that legacy teams may be apprehensive to migrate to leverage the common frameworks. It takes time to eliminate this debt, and some teams may not see the value in switching to these frameworks if their existing process is already working. Final challenge here I'd like to share is that participation is needed when intersourcing. The libraries aren't meant for only the DataOps team to develop, but instead for all data engineering teams to contribute if others can benefit from the functionality. So we continue to advocate and share the powers of these libraries with our squads. Here's some tips. Self-service is great and works for most, but it also requires more support from those who aren't as familiar with the process. We created wiki pages to provide step-by-step instructions when filling out the accelerator forms. However, some people still prefer to be assisted with a human touch. Therefore, we found that there is some level of coaching that may be required when teams begin to leverage the frameworks. There is also an expected skill set level when using the data engineering frameworks provided. Although we have automated the provisioning process, consumers must be knowledgeable of how to leverage those resources once they have been provisioned. Lastly, it's not totally an if you build it, they will come world. You need to get out there and share with others what you're up to. We showcased our solutions at any venue that arose, including today, the DataStack Summit. We spoke proud of what we accomplished and knew others would be interested to learn about all the goodness we were doing in the DataOps world and how others were benefiting from it. So what are we looking towards next? We want our data ingestion process to be fully automated and be owned by the source systems. We are looking for alternative out-of-the-box solutions to facilitate the rapid ingestion process for those who don't need the complexity of the frameworks we built in-house. We want to be able to focus more attention on the transformation of the data, And as you have heard, demand is high for our team, and we need to scale up. We need to staff up and work towards a world where we focus more on coaching others in order to continue and deliver at this rapid pace. And finally, we want to create APIs that will tie everything together for quality, cataloging, and governance. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope I've shared some useful information that will help you in your DataOps journey. I can be reached on LinkedIn if you have further questions. And I'd also like to give special thanks to those who assisted in preparing this presentation. Thank you and have a great day.